the president after he moves to end the DACA program.
Political analyst Wendy, Patrick, Laura Fink join us now with This Week in Politics. Ladies, good morning to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
We recently hearing from the president saying those who are concerned about their status, their DACA status over the 6-month period, they have, he's saying, nothing to worry about. Laura.
Well, I think that their lives are at stake. They're registered with the government. They did that trusting that the law would apply to them. These are folks that are in jobs. They are people who know no other home but America. And they do have something to fear. Because instead of advancing and using the bully pulpit to advance legislation in Congress, which Trump has the power to do, he instead just ripped the carpet right out from under them. So they absolutely have something to fear, and we all are going to have to advocate for their rights, for their right to be here, for their contributions, and really to treat them fairly and justly in the absence of this executive order.
All right, Wendy?
Yeah, you know, Raul and Shelley, the president has a pattern. He will come out in front and say something outrageous and then backpedal from it, step away from it. And he's done the same thing here. Basically, you can't argue with the fact that it's got to be a constitutional issue. It can't be something the executive branch deals with. It was never meant from the Obama administration to be a permanent solution. So you can't argue with that. Then you get from the legal argument to the emotional argument. That is one that you have seen the president express empathy, compassion, not only on the campaign trail, but as recently as this morning in his tweet. So what will probably happen, you know, you got to set a deadline because that's one of the ways to get Congress to act. But if in fact that deadline comes and goes, the president, on not just candidate Trump, but now President Trump, has expressed a willingness, I didn't say a promise, but a willingness to figure out how to solve this issue humanely, but legally. And that is the number one thing that people are talking about.
I try not to argue with Wendy about the legal implications. But that tweet was written by Nancy Pelosi and negotiated by Nancy Pelosi. And he sent Jeff Sessions out to give the news of this so-called strategy of removing the protections before official legislation was ironed out. I mean, that just puts the dreamers in the middle of the road.
Well, here's the interesting thing about the fact that he used Jeff Sessions to do it, because I noticed that as well. The president is smart enough to realize that when it comes to matters that he is not, that aren't in his wheelhouse, let's say, which would include politics and law, for example, he will send out those that actually have the wherewithal, the training, the experience, and the articulation necessary to make those points.
I mean, he's
now,
the
it's
president.
true that he's facing these lawsuits from a variety of states, but the fact that he would have Jeff Sessions really explain this kind of a position. Now, I would argue it's because he maybe didn't want to take any questions afterwards, because that's where he gets himself into trouble.
Amen.
I also think that Jeff Sessions is better able, not only due to his demeanor, but on his legal knowledge, to handle some of the fallout that is now that we're seeing on both sides of the aisle, surprisingly, following that announcement.
Or I could sum up and say he's just a big chicken.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. Speaking of both sides of the aisle, boy, oh boy, what a surprise as Chuck Schumer hanging out with the president in the Oval Office. This deal that was struck to keep the government funded. Where did this come from? Because a lot of Republicans were shocked by it. I wanted your thoughts, Wendy. Was this a thing to bring everybody together in the wake of Harvey?
Well, if that was the intention, it doesn't seem to have worked according to plan. However, you are correct that there is something about Hurricane Harvey that really has had a bipartisan effect in terms of getting them to agree on something. Here's the thing, though. I almost said, here's the deal, but then I would have ruined my own punchline. In order to make that kind of an agreement, you would have to be able to tie Harvey relief funding to something of substance that both sides want. So it's questionable whether this was a deal, first of all, because I know a lot of Republicans that are saying, this is just giving away the store. This isn't giving us any leverage. However, one of the things that the president has done, or at least has said he would do, and this is a step in the right direction, is not just be so partisan that you're not going to be able to work together on other things that may arguably be important down the line. So I think it was something that was done not just to appease Nancy Pelosi. I know she was quick to jump on that, saying, hey, I had a phone call with him, and then he tweets like 5 minutes later or whatever it was. But I also think it's something that has alienated some of his biggest supporters because of the fashion, the way in which he did it, much less the merits.
Okay, we have final thoughts. Are we ready? Put the 30 seconds up on the clock. Laura, we will begin with you.
Well, I'll start by saying that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have been cutting deals since before Trump was even attempting to fire people. So they got their day, and they will continue to have leverage. So it was a net loss for Republicans and a net loss for Trump. The other thing I will say is this. There are a lot of people that are pretending that this is the new Trump, but I just say remember the teleprompter. We may or may not get DACA protections. We may or may not get infrastructure spending, and I'm not counting on Donald Trump changing his ways and negotiating at all.
Very good, and like 2 seconds to spare.
I know.
Laura came in under time. That's awesome.
That's a
Okay,
miracle.
let's see if I can do that. What I'll focus on really is segueing from the deal into what it represents. It was tied in some significant part, as no doubt we'll have in the future, to hurricane relief efforts, to help those, to the bipartisan outreach that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I hate to say it, we're seeing it again today. Our hearts and prayers go out to those in Florida, and I think it's an excellent opportunity for both sides to come together and wear the same jersey.
3 seconds to spare.
Oh my gosh.
You put that together. That's like 5
was
seconds
quick.
of talk for next week. Laura, Wendy, thank you
Can we
both.
add it in next week?
Yeah,
No, we
we'll
just
add
want to
it.
hear a Shali or a Rebel joke. We'll just wait for that.
Thank you, ladies. Have a good weekend.
All right, thanks.
7:19.